Hello, with me today is my friend Eric, and we're about to review Man of Steel, the 2013 film, the 2013 reboot of the Superman franchise, which of course is based on the character originally created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. And Man of Steel is also the first film to take place in the, I think it's called the DC Expanded Universe, or the DC Cinematic Universe, which is like, basically all the DC films coming out now are all taking place in the same world. Kind of what they did with the animated series, but you know, they're trying to compete with Marvel and all that shit.
Basically, if you convince yourself that they had this plan set up with Man of Steel, then sure. But if you're like me, who says they totally made this shit up, no.
Alright. Now, Man of Steel is directed by Zack Snyder, who previously directed the 2004 remake of Dawn of the Dead. Mm-hmm. He directed 300, and he directed Watchmen, and he also, he did some animated movie about owls, which I actually heard wasn't bad.
I heard that was a pretty good movie, actually.
He did the movie...
I did want to see that one.
Yeah. He did the movie Sucker Punch, which I've heard so many mixed things about. I haven't seen it myself, but that's the movie I think that got a lot of people to start hating Zack Snyder. Even though before that, Zack Snyder was a pretty well-regarded director with movies like the Dawn of the Dead remake, and Watchmen, I think, is probably his masterpiece, but that's only because it's based on a really good book and follows that book really well.
He did 300 too, right?
He did 300, which...
Won Best Picture.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I think so. Oh, wait. I'm thinking Gladiator. Never mind.
Yeah, 300 and Gladiator, they're
but
two
still,
different movies.
Yeah, I know, but still, like, the style's kind of similar. But the point is, 300 is a good movie.
I like 300 for what it is. For what 300 is, it's not bad. It's just, I don't know, it's not really my cup of tea.
The best way I could describe Zack Snyder, and one of the things that, well, probably the main thing that he's well known for and what I appreciate from him, he's at his best with the visual style.
Yes.
He's a visual filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
In other aspects, needs a little work, in my opinion.
I think I think story in his movies is what's lacking, but he's not the one writing his movies.
True.
Once again,
Very
I think
true.
Watchmen is his best film, but that's only because it's based on a graphic novel, which is also one of my top 10 favorite books of all time. Mm-hmm. So because it's based on such a good book, I think that's what makes Watchmen such a great film. Mm-hmm. And also, as much shit as people give Zack Snyder now...
Zack Snyder.
He's not a hack. But as much shit as people give him now, you gotta realize, Watchmen, that was a book that people thought was never going to be made into a movie.
They thought that was inadaptable.
Yeah, and he did a pretty decent job with that. So I will always give Zack Snyder credit for at least doing the impossible and turning Watchmen into a film and actually making it a pretty decent film, too. Mm-hmm. And I do like his Dawn of the Dead remake. I like the original one better, of course, but I do like the Dawn of the Dead remake. And truth be told, I like Man of Steel. I actually really do like this movie. Has its issues, which he will point out a lot of the issues, but I still enjoyed the film. So the film, of course, is a reboot of the Superman franchise, so it's not set in the same continuity as, like, the Christopher Reeve movies, set in its own continuity, and it's a retelling of Superman's origin.
Story, yeah.
So the film begins with, like, all the Krypton stuff, how basically the people of Krypton are destroying themselves by harvesting from Krypton's core. Jor-El is the one who is trying to tell them, stop this, but they're not listening. And, of course, at the same time, it turns out there's also a coup going on against the character of Zod is planning a coup against the government of Krypton, and that's one thing I had an issue with, is, like, they were doing all that, like, okay, you already had the stuff of Krypton destroying itself.
Yeah.
On top of that, you had the stuff about Zod trying to plan a coup, and it's like, it was a little too much. At the same time, though, I thought it was well done for the most part.
Well, for me, when I first watched it, I thought it was kind of jarring that they tried to shove all that plot into basically 10 minutes, because to be fair, everyone knows that the planet's going to explode anyway. Cause,
Yeah, that's like...
you know,
Superman's origin, it's one of those things that you could go to, like, some third world country and meet some, like, little kid selling apples on the street and say, hey, do you know Superman's origin? And he'll be like, yeah, I know Superman's origin.
For the most part, yeah, most people would know Superman's origin. But I think Krypton is an important part of the piece of Superman's origin, and it kind of it frustrated me that they just glossed over it just to set up the plot stuff. Where there is some interesting stuff on Krypton, which I wish I wish they stuck on Krypton for like maybe 20-30 minutes.
I could see that, yeah.
Just to get that, just so you can care, honestly, so you get to care about the characters in Krypton, even though it's going to explode anyway.
Honestly, I think what would have been a cool idea is, like, what if they were to they mention Krypton, but I think it would have been better if they did, like, made this, but only mentioned Krypton, and then did a prequel completely set on Krypton.
That would be fucking
about,
awesome,
like, the breakdown of this world. I think that would have been a really interesting movie, actually.
I would have loved that.
Yeah.
For me, the ideal Superman origin story was told in the Bruce Timm produced animated series, Superman the Animated Series.
With the pilot episode.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it was great.
But the reason why I bring it up is because I think they did that setup just so perfectly. They had 30 minutes, an entire episode, just focused on Krypton. Second episode took place
on Earth, when Clark Kent's an adult and all that.
Yeah, but the thing is, they split it up into 3 parts. It's pretty much like an hour-and-a-half movie if you combine all 3 episodes together, because it's divided into 3 parts. And another interesting storyline that they reworked a little bit into that origin story was that Brainiac was developed by the Kryptonian people.
Yeah, and Brainiac
I think that is so freaking brilliant. They should try to expand on that story element a little bit more, rather than just sticking to the comics, which is kind of, oh yeah, Krypton just blows up.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, I think what you could read into with this is, like, Krypton destroyed itself by depleting the planet of its resources and then harvesting from the core. You could do that to... Maybe they were trying to make a commentary on, like, what we're actually doing to the planet.
Yeah, no,
like,
it was an obvious environmental message, but the problem is your message lasted about 10 minutes, and also you're throwing in this other shit of the coup and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there was literally just off the bat, 10 minutes in, you don't care, and then you end up on Earth, and then it jumps into the future.
Yeah. But long story short, at the end of this part of the movie, when Krypton is about to pretty much destroy itself, I'm blanking. Jor-El and his wife put their son Kal-El in a ship, sending it to a planet called Earth, our planet, of course, and jumps like 30 years in the future. Wow. And this is another problem I had with the film, was the whole, okay, you have the stuff on Krypton, but then they start doing... It jumps to 30 years in the future, and then they do flashbacks. I felt like, pacing-wise and structure-wise, that was kind of an issue for me.
It was idiotic. It was dumb to do it that way. It was... literally, while I was seeing it in the theater, I was like, Snyder, just stick to a setting, and just stick to a setting, please. Just stay in a timeline for 20 minutes, please. Let something develop. Because once you get some character development, it jumps back in time when he's just a whiny little kid, and you get the emotional stuff with Pa and everything, but it's like, we should be seeing this before you jump 30 years later.
Yeah.
Like, all this stuff of caring about Kal and him trying to cope with his powers and being so different, that's the whole point of Superman, and yet you're throwing it in by pieces. No one's going to care in the middle of the movie when you jump back and... it's spoilers. I'm not gonna say what, but
long story short,
what happens.
Yeah, long story short though is like it. You see Kal-El as an adult, or he's Clark Kent, and what happens in the movie is you find out that Zod and his soldiers are also survivors of Krypton, have now come to Earth, and they come to Earth because they want to rebuild their world using Earth's atmosphere and using these machines that could change Earth's atmosphere to match them. And so pretty much it's almost like an alien invasion movie where Zod's armies invade the Earth, and now Clark realizes
Superman.
that he must become Superman in order to save the Earth and save his adopted world.
Yeah,
That's the plot of Man of Steel in a nutshell.
Yeah, he has to choose his old somewhat like his making anew of his old people or starting anew with the Earth people.
Essentially, he has to choose what's more important: the people who adopted him, or his birthplace.
His birth people.
Yeah. So, structure-wise, there are some issues.
Yeah.
I still personally like the film. I didn't mind what's his name, Cavill or what's his
Henry Cavill.
Yeah, I didn't mind him as Superman.
I liked him. I do know a lot of people are like very, I don't know, like they're really in the middle, very split with Henry Cavill, but I personally like him. I think he has the look of Superman. I think he does a good job. It's just, in my opinion, I just think the direction is just wrong. And that's, because I think he's capable of being a good Superman, but like I said, it falls under the direction, and I'm not going to blame Zack Snyder entirely, because
some of that might have been the script. The script is written by David S. Goyer, who previously actually co-wrote the Dark Knight trilogy with Christopher Nolan. He also wrote the Blade movies, which I like the Blade movies.
I like the Blade movies.
But they're not like the most well-written things in the world. I still like them. David Goyer is a very hit-or-miss writer. And I think he's better when he's working with more talented people, honestly. In the film, they try to recapture the dark tone that Christopher Nolan's films had. Yeah. Which, truthfully, I know you had a problem with it. I didn't, because I'm of the opinion that you can tell a dark Superman story without making the character himself dark. But then again, he is kind of a dark character in this, too. But, which they kind of failed at, but the way I see it, though, is, okay, this is his beginnings. He's still learning. Yeah. Of course, with the sequels to this, they fail miserably at trying to make Superman like
Sequel? What sequel? We don't have a sequel.
You mean Batman vs. Superman?
That's not a sequel, even though they marketed it as one.
It is technically a sequel. It's in the same universe. It's continuing the story. Not well, but we'll get to that. I want to get to that in the end.
Yeah. But going back to what you were saying with the studio intervention and everything, I remember around the time Dark Knight Rises was finishing up and everything, and they were talking about the Superman reboot, and I heard that the studios were basically forcing Zack Snyder to go with the Christopher Nolan style for Superman or Man of Steel.
And Christopher Nolan was a producer on this film, I believe.
Yeah. And I think he was on all three. No, I don't know about Suicide Squad. I know for sure he did.
And I think he also co-wrote at least the original story for this, but then Goyer wrote the official screenplay. Yeah,
I'm sure he had like a couple throw-ins here and there, but the thing is, in my opinion, I agree with you to an extent that Superman can be done in a dark, gritty style. Again, going back to my example of Superman the Animated Series, later in the first season, they get to that. Like, there's even in the commentary, they talked about how we were starting to animate Superman on the same cards that they were doing with Batman to make it darker. But the thing is that they noted, though, was that they always, even though the color tones and everything were still going darker and everything as the season progressed, still, though, you notice that there's a noticeable difference between the colors where Superman never lost his light, per se.
Yeah. I think the point of Superman is he's supposed to be the one ray of light in a dark world.
Yes.
And that's why, like, Superman represents optimism, whereas Batman is much more nihilistic, much more pessimistic.
Yeah, much more. I basically compare like Gotham to Metropolis. Metropolis is literally called Metropolis because it's seen as the city of tomorrow.
It's like a utopia almost.
Yeah, and Gotham is the exact opposite of that. And
Gotham is basically Detroit.
Yeah, but 100 times worse. And Batman and Superman are basically their character representations of their cities, and you can go either way. But the point is, that's why I say Superman to an extent doesn't work in a Batman nitty-gritty style. You can go about it that way, but you have to retain some of that Superman thunder of he's the man of tomorrow, optimism, he will overcome this, and part of that in artistical sense is keeping him, colored and having him be the shining light in this around this dark, gritty frame that you're watching. The problem with Man of Steel, they did everything in the dark, gritty frame, including Superman. And so when you watch Superman, you're not like, Superman, yeah, I'm for him. You're like, oh.
Yeah.
You just get so depressed watching.
The one thing I will say, though, is I liked how this movie tried to take a pretty realistic approach to how people would actually react to a being like Superman revealing himself to the world. There's the scene in the movie where Lois Lane's talking to Perry White, and Perry White, basically drops her article, and he says, do you have any idea how people would actually react if we found out that aliens actually exist? Right. And that's true. It's things would change a lot if we found out that aliens actually existed.
I don't want to come across like these are the worst movies ever, because I'm a DC whore. I mean, this is like my third time wearing this during these reviews and everything. Yeah. But the thing is, I just love DC so much. DC's, that's where I ride the horse with. But the thing is, for every interesting element that they could have taken, they just don't, though. Like you said, like that, having this element of the world reacting to a Kryptonian from another world,
and not just that, but play it up enough. Pretty much has the powers of a god here on Earth.
Yeah, there's no world building to these movies. It feels so rushed and
you say in these movies,
together.
I am trying to focus mostly on this one.
Man of Steel,
yeah. Which I disagree with you. I think this, to me, while it's a flawed movie, I think is the start of what could have been a great franchise.
I agree.
Of course, we'll get to that when we review Batman vs. Superman and Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Those are kind of showing that this might not be a great franchise, but I feel like this could be the start of a series that could get better over time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the next two movies in this series somewhat proven me wrong on that point.
Yeah, but going back to Man of Steel, it's just that I felt like they could have done more with that material, and I felt like even the later movies, they just don't do enough. Even including Man of Steel, it's just one little reference, and then they just go back to the plot of Zod doing whatever the hell he's doing.
Now, a lot of people complained in this movie about the religious imagery and Superman essentially representing Christ. I don't complain about that because, you know what, a lot of the comics have really delved into that, and I actually really like that too.
I do too.
And you could even, if you wanted to, you could even look at Zod in this movie as almost representing Lucifer in a way. Mm-hmm. Like Lucifer, according to the legends, was an angel who tried to rebel against God. Mm-hmm. You could take Zod as representing that, where Zod and his soldiers tried to rebel against the people of Krypton. Well, you could take him as kind of representing the devil in a way. Even the fact that they were sent to the Phantom Zone, which is kind of hell when you think about it.
Yeah. Like there's elements like that I found really interesting, but it
definitely wasn't subtle in the movie at all. But
but again, Zack Snyder, visual director, and it works for Superman. I don't see any problem with it. In fact, that's what Superman should be representing. Like that's perfectly natural. Whether you call him Jesus or Superman or God. Yeah. It doesn't matter. The point is that he's the beacon of hope in this dark situation.
Mm-hmm, and he's basically the savior of humanity. So I have no problem with the Christ imagery in the film.
Neither do I.
What was I going to say? Now, what do you think of Zod in the movie? Personally, I thought Michael Shannon did a really good job as Zod.
He's funny.
I will find him!
Exactly.
Honestly,
I don't need to say anymore.
I still liked him. I thought he did a good job, and I honestly liked the characterization of Zod, where it's like, okay, from his point of view, he thinks he's doing the right thing because he's thinking about his own people.
I mean, I thought he was fine. I thought that, like I said, there's parts where I'm just like, that's really funny, and it doesn't work in the nitty-gritty tone that they're going with. I felt like they could have casted someone better, I thought.
I disagree. I thought he did. Well,
I'm not saying he did a bad job.
His voice is a little. You could definitely use that for parodies or something. But
exactly.
I thought he did a good job, and I liked the characterization of Zod, where it's like maybe they could have touched on it a little more. But I honestly thought he was a lot more three-dimensional in this, and people made him out to be. Like I've heard a lot of reviews saying he's a generic bad guy. To me, he's not. To me, he comes off as a much more sympathetic character because you realize, from his point of view, he thinks he's doing the right thing. And he is he is kind of what the people of Krypton made him. Because they even touch on that on Krypton, Kal-El was the first natural birth in hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, and it turns out that for years Kryptonians were just cloned and they were just made into what society on Krypton wanted them to be. So in a way, I feel sympathy for Zod because he is kind of what they made him, and he thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, no,
to me, he actually reminded me a lot of Ra's al Ghul in Batman Begins.
Yeah.
He kind of, from his point of view, he thinks he's doing the right thing. You realize that he's not doing the right thing and he needs to be stopped, but I felt like they were trying to go for a sympathetic characterization of him.
Yeah, no, honestly, I had that same vibe going too when I was watching the movie in the theater for the first time. In fact, Ra's al Ghul really stood out to me. Even the design of him reminded me of Ra's al Ghul a lot. It's just like what we were saying, with the structure and everything. I honestly, a lot of that backstory with the Kryptonians and everything, over my head, I totally missed it because...
Oh, all right.
Because
it's one of the things that stood out in the movie to me.
But that's the thing, the structure of it where you're jumping around all these different, time frames and all that, it's a mess. It's literally a jumbled mess. There's a good movie in here, and I'm not denying that.
I don't think it's that much of a mess compared to Batman vs. Superman. It's not that much of a mess.
I feel like there's some things they could have switched around to try to make it work a little bit better, in my opinion. But no, I do agree with you. Like I said, there are still good things to come out of this movie. It's really entertaining. It's just they could have done so much better, in my opinion, and that's the disappointing thing, because you're going in all hyped up and everything. You're like, yeah, and then when you come out, you're like, fuck, that was so underwhelming.
Okay, your opinion is wrong, but you're entitled to be wrong. I do want to point out that this movie actually does seem to take a lot of inspiration from a Superman graphic novel called Earth 1, which was kind of like a retelling of Superman's origin, because in the graphic novel Earth 1, Earth gets invaded by these aliens, not Zod, but they get invaded by these aliens, and in that graphic novel, the aliens communicate with the people of Earth through TV signals, and Zod does the same thing in this movie, which I actually thought that was honestly, I thought that was a pretty creepy scene, actually.
It was creepy, but it was just kind of weird because it just came out of nowhere.
I thought it worked.
I liked it though. After everything leading up to it, it got my attention for a little while.
I also kind of liked how Zod and his soldiers, their masks that they wear almost resemble skulls.
Yeah, I liked the design of it and everything. The costume design was really great. I like that.
I will find him! Even though I like Zod in this movie, there are certain parts where it's like, okay, I can make fun of that.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It contradicts your ultra nitty-gritty style, What did you think? Well, another problem that I had with it, too, was Superman, it takes his entire childhood and somewhat of his adulthood to kind of control his powers.
That is something I wanted to bring up.
Which was interesting, and yet Zod and his crew figure it out. Well, Zod specifically is able to control it in 10 minutes of overcharge.
That's something I wanted to bring up, is because, okay, you see in Clark Kent's childhood, it takes him years to adapt to Earth's atmosphere, but also to adapt to the sounds around him.
Yep, because he has ultra hearing. It affects him because it's
takes
really,
Zod
really
10 minutes.
Literally, not even less than that. Yeah. It literally is 5 minutes in the middle of a fight. By the way, he just does it because I'm a soldier.
The movie has problems. I can forgive a lot of the problems. I still like the movie.
Well, that was just a problem that I wanted to bring up. But honest opinion, what did you think of? Because a lot of people hate this part of the movie, and that's the destruction. What did you think of that?
I'm split.
And also the very ending.
Okay.
Too.
Well, I'm split on the destruction part.
Okay.
Because to a certain extent, I understand the argument where it's like, okay, he's still learning. He's learning how to control his powers. At the same time, there were plenty of moments where, as he's lifting Zod up, you could have lifted yourself up over that building. Oh no, you go right through that building and probably killed somebody.
Yeah. If you're a fan of Dragon Ball Z, this is the Dragon Ball movie you wanted. Not Dragon Ball Evolution. Man of Steel.
So after this movie, this film was the first film of the DC Expanded Universe. This film was followed up with a sequel in 2016, Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, which was also a reboot of the Batman franchise, and had Wonder Woman in it for some reason. We're going to end up reviewing that. You'll hear our opinions on that. But that one, people complained about this movie being a mess. That's the movie that's a freaking mess, in my opinion. And then the third film set in the DC Expanded Universe was Suicide Squad. Also kind of a fucking mess.
My DC heart. I just want them to blow up the universe and start anew.
I still think there's... I still personally think there's an opportunity to right this ship. Because I still think this movie's good. The other two films in this franchise, not so much, but I think there's still potential to do something good. DC has to stop being dickheads about it, though.
Yeah, but it's not just that simple of being dickheads. Like I said, they're stuck in, we need to catch up with Marvel.
Then you gotta stop trying to catch up with Marvel.
Well, yeah.
They need better stories.
Yeah. They need fucking new, like, everything new.
I think this film could have started a great series. It's just the two sequels that followed did not.
But the thing is, though, too, I'm convinced that, the extended universe wasn't considered until after Marvel blew up.
I'm in agreement with you. Like, even at the time this movie came out, I don't even think too many people knew that this was going to be the beginning
of an extended universe.
I'm
sure DC had no idea until Marvel blew up.
They literally came up with that, I think, after this movie came out.
And that's the problem. And that's why I'm saying they need to blow it up, because they haven't planned it out at all.
Yeah.
What they should have done is either blow it up and start anew again, or take their time and just think everything out and don't even bother trying to catch up. But they're trying to catch up because they know Batman's a moneymaker, so it doesn't matter. They just throw him in. They'll make their money anyway. They don't care.
And here's where they really fucked up. They're trying to do with this thing where all the movies take place in the same universe, but DC has a lot of shows out now that are set in their own universe. Well, Marvel's been doing it right, where they have the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies.
Then you have
the TV shows that also take place in that universe. DC fucked up.
That's another example. Like,
here's the thing,
those shows are not canon at all.
Yeah, here's the thing. They're trying. I heard that DC's trying to say, like, oh, it's a multiverse, so they're like set on an alternate universe, the TV shows. But it's clear they're just saying that because they know they fucked up.
Pretty much, because that's all they can say. Yeah. Unless you blow it up and then you incorporate it in, you could do that with your already established canon. Just blow it up and incorporate what you have already. You can do that. Yeah. You can fix this, but you refuse to.
It was at
DC, come on!
It was at that moment DC realized they fucked up.
But they don't care. They're riding their asses to the bank because of all the money they made from Batman vs. Superman, at least. It did well in the box office.
No.
And Man of Steel, too.
Well, Man of Steel was good. Man of Steel had potential to start a good franchise.
Had potential.
Look, this movie's not as bad as you're making it out to be because your opinion is wrong.
I'm not saying it's the worst thing ever. I'm saying the potential did not live up to expectations.
Alright. Now, this review's already probably going to end up being 40 minutes long.
Yeah.
Want to cut it short now and
Yeah.
maybe get on to another film.